It's question time. Let's go for it.
This is Victoria, who says, I asked Jesus into my heart over 15 years ago, then backslid due to drugs. If a backslidden Christian dies while in their sin, will they still be saved?
I believe so. I know that there are those who disagree, who say, well, no, if you're in sin, it's too bad. But I think that when you have accepted Jesus, you belong to him, and he's going to bring you back. So that's what my feeling is.
This is Linda, who says, I've struggled with tithing for years. I never feel like I can afford to tithe. Will my disobedience keep me from being blessed?
Of course it will. Of course it will. You're robbing God. That's what the Bible says. Hey, will a man rob God? You see, this is a tenth that says, God, you have claim over my finances. And if you acknowledge God has claim over your finances, then God will begin to bless your finances, because he says, these are mine, and therefore I'm going to bless them.
Why do you think, if that being the case, and God giving such a clear directive and such a clear promise, why do you think there's so few people that embrace that?
Well, they're selfish, and they don't take a provision. You really have to take the tithe first and say, that's first. And
it's non-negotiable.
And non-negotiable. Mm-hmm. Then the 90% belongs to me. So there are many people who go for, 1, 2, 3 tithes. It's not just one. Yeah. It depends on tithes and offerings, what the Lord has given you. But if you want his blessing, you said, well, you be restricted from blessing. The answer is yes, you will not receive blessings, mm-hmm. because the blessings come as you're faithful in giving. All right.
Okay, this is Marilyn, who asks, do you think it's wrong for Christians to seek help from counselors and psychiatrists? What about using psychiatric medicine?
I'm not sure what you mean by psychiatric methods. You're talking about Prozac and things like that? I don't know what you do.
Probably. Mm-hmm.
I don't think that it's necessarily wrong to seek help from people.
Some people have chemical imbalance. I mean,
sure
they
need
do. That.
And many of these psychoses are caused by chemical imbalances. So the fact that you've been prescribed a medicine that will counterbalance the, mm-hmm. A lot of this stuff is chemicals in your brain, and the brain is firing wrong, so you can fix that right. Yeah. The trouble with secular psychiatry, though, when they start getting into your soul and doing, psychoanalysis and that kind of thing, then you're on a slippery slope, and these people are not godly, and it's not a good thing, in my opinion, to trust yourself to somebody who's going to take control of your mind and say, well, what you really need to do is go have an affair. That'll set you up. Mm-hmm. And, advice like that comes down from some of these shrinks.
This is Daniel, who says, I know people who've been sued because the foreclosed house they bought was not foreclosed properly. How can I make sure this doesn't happen to me?
Well, you read your documents. The thing that we use the term is non-recourse. It's just real simple. This is a non-recourse note, and that means that there's no recourse to your assets. The only recourse a lender has is to the property itself. Non-recourse means that beyond that, they can't get at your assets. But on the other hand, the old rule used to be, if you took out a loan and you didn't pay it back, the creditor could get whatever you had. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like recently people have, leave off the key and mail in the key, and here's your property again.
So that's the term to look for.
Non-recourse.
Okay.
All right. Stephen
says, my friend and I were discussing retirement, and he said that the Bible never really mentions retiring. Should that affect my plan to retire in 5 years?
I want to tell you something about this retiring thing. No, the Bible doesn't. The old saints didn't retire, but they were like patriarchs, and they could sit on the front porch and opine about the affairs of the world.
Pontificate.
Pontificate, there's a certain respect. The Bible says, stand up or rise up before the hoary head, the gray hair. If there was respect, so when you get too old to plow, these people, there was agrarian or follow the flocks. You sit down in the tent and have somebody look after you. But to say it doesn't talk about retirement, because people didn't want to retire. They wanted to keep active as long as they could.
This is Katrina, who says, my husband's had multiple affairs. How can I forgive him and learn to trust him again?
I don't know beyond that. You've got to tell me more, because there comes a time that you say to your husband, I've had enough. Mm-hmm. You know, you just can't have a guy philandering all the time, and that is grounds for divorce in biblical terms. You know, how could I learn to trust him? I mean, I just don't know anything but your husband.
Yeah, first, he needs to be trustworthy.
Well, of course.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think you have a right to say, look, if you're going to keep this up, you and I aren't going to be married anymore. And it's tough love. It works. I think that the guests talked about separation.
Knowing when it's time
move
to
on.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, we leave you with these words from James 1:5. If any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to him.